Developing your creative practice is one way that Arts Council England supports individuals. This short video will give some top tips to think about when you're ready to draft your application. It probably makes most sense to watch this when you're already familiar with the guidance. It's also a good idea to take the quiz called Am I Ready to Apply before you start to draft the application, and you'll find this on our website. I'm going to shorten the name of the fund, Developing Your Creative Practice, to DYCP throughout this video. So what does the video cover? Well, first off, we'll consider some general top tips for DYCP. Then we'll look at the 3 main questions on the application form. And we'll finish with some key tips for answering these questions.
So let's start with top tips. We've got 8 to consider for DYCP. The first top tip is to remember that DYCP isn't about delivering a project or doing more of the same in your practice. Instead, it's about making a meaningful shift in your work. Obviously, your career is going to develop with small changes over time, and often those small steps have immense value as they build up. But the purpose of this fund is to support really bold, ambitious change at a specific point in time that has a realistic chance of being achieved. So I tend to think of DYCP as a fund that exists to support those really rare moments in life when this is the case and everything seems to come together. Top tip number 2. Strong applications provide really specific detail, and they allow your personal voice to come through. So, it's best to avoid broad, general statements. It's really important to be able to picture you and your work clearly when we're reading your application. Some people are starting to use AI to help their applications, and this can be a really helpful tool to help you organise or streamline what you're writing. However, we have also noticed that AI can lead to applications having similar sounding language rather than being unique. So, if you do decide to use AI, here are some top tips. Sometimes AI seems to flatten out individuality. So if you're using it to write your application, try to make sure that it doesn't remove your personality. Use language that's natural and relevant to you. Don't feel that you've got to change your language in a way that doesn't feel authentic. You really don't need to use jargon or complicated language. Don't be tempted to let AI overshadow your own way of expressing yourself. Consider whether your application clearly expresses your unique idea. And on a really practical note, just be cautious of using AI systems that retain users' information. Some platforms use information to train commercial technology companies' models. You can find out how your data is used by reading the terms of service of individual AI tools. And also, remember that you are accountable for what you submit to us. So the ideas you propose should be your own original ideas. Top tip 3. Make sure that your activity plan includes enough detail to give us a clear sense of what you want to do. The strongest applications include enough detail to bring the project to life and to show that it's realistic you can achieve it. You can add as many lines to the table as you need, but some people I've spoken to find it useful to start by drawing their timeline. Or one example someone gave me was that they use post-it notes so that you can rearrange them in different orders. And that way your mind doesn't get trapped inside a table format right from the start. Another useful tip someone shared with me is to start with the big milestones in your project. So what are the key things you want to achieve, and when do they have to happen? And once you've got those in place, you can work backwards to fill in the detail. What do you need to do in order to achieve those key goals? Top tip number 4. Make sure that your budget is as detailed as possible. Expenditure is particularly important for DYCP. This is the money that you plan to spend to develop your practice. The strongest applications use the budget to help tell a story about your development. Each line of what you spend shows what your plans are. When I see a strong application, I can actually often get quite a clear picture of the development an applicant is planning just by looking at the expenditure. The person who used the post-it notes to create their timeline had another helpful tip. They looked at each post-it on their timeline, and then they used that as a guide to think about what they need to spend. So this can help you to build your budget lines more naturally. But of course, different things do work for different people, so you might find a different way that works better for you.
Top tip 5. We ask you to attach an example of your work. If you're not sure what to include, it might be helpful to imagine you're introducing someone to your work for the first time. What would you show them or play them? What's the best way to illustrate your work or describe it? And think about the format that best represents your work. Is it a video, a document? Is it photographs or images? Maybe it's audience or media comments. How would you give someone a clear sense of the kind of work you make? Top tip 6. We ask you to attach a letter of support. And we've heard from many applicants that we could explain this more clearly. So here are some tips. Make sure the letter comes from someone who's been involved in your career and knows your work. It's important that they understand what you want to do and that they can explain the future opportunities you'll get because of doing it. A strong letter of support can demonstrate both the value and the quality of your work, as well as explain the significance of the development opportunity and talk about the doors it could open for the future. Make sure it's clear who the letter is from so we understand their relevance. We often see applications where the letter of support doesn't explain the relevance of the person writing the letter, is from a friend or a relative, doesn't cover what you're applying for, or doesn't cover the future opportunities it might lead to. And these things can make your application weaker. So give your letter of support some thought and ask for it early on when you start to build your application. Top tip 7. On our website, there is a DYCP quiz which has 7 questions. It's called Am I Ready to Apply? It helps you understand if your idea is the right fit for the fund and if it's developed enough to have a strong chance of receiving funding. When you take the quiz, if you give an answer that suggests we can't fund your idea, you can still continue answering. And this could help you to understand what you need to do to prepare before you make the application. It's anonymous, and you can take the quiz as many times as you want. It's a great tool to help you understand whether the idea is developed enough to have a chance of being successful. Top tip 8. Before you submit your application, share it with someone you trust to see if it reads clearly. Now, this works best if you trust them to be honest about things they don't understand, and if they trust you enough to ask questions that might seem obvious to you but might not be clear to a grant decision panel. Never underestimate how helpful it is to have a second opinion to help you focus in on making your application as strong as possible.
Okay, so now we'll take a look at the 3 main questions in the application. The first big question focuses on your work. It asks, tell us about yourself and your creative practice. This is a section that helps us to understand if you're ready to benefit from a development opportunity and whether you can demonstrate a clear track record. Top tips for this part of the application are to clearly describe your practice and include important milestones. Describing where you are now in your career is going to help to evidence why a development opportunity is important to move your practice forward. There are some things you can think about when you're answering this question. The focus of your artistic, cultural or creative activities. Your main creative achievements to date. So you might want to think about exhibitions, productions, publications, recordings. Any important commissions that you've received, or important pieces of work that you've completed. If you've worked with any established creative or cultural partners. Or any other information that's relevant to your track record. Overall, it's really helpful in this section to think about whether you've shown that you're ready to benefit from a development opportunity. The second big question we ask you is tell us about the development opportunity you want to undertake, what you hope to get out of it, and how you will go about it. This does feel like quite a big question, and it can feel challenging to know where to start. 3 things to remember. Include detail about the idea, be ambitious, and show that your idea is realistic and well planned. Weaker applications often have really ambitious ideas, but it isn't clear how they'll be achieved or whether they're realistic. People who have applied previously with strong applications say that a good approach can be to break this down into smaller chunks or steps. So, you might want to think about the question in 3 parts. Part 1. What is the development opportunity you want to do? So, think about whether you can describe the activities that you want to do. For example, building new networks to present your work in the future, being mentored by named experts in your field, or identifying specific courses or training. Top tips for this section are to focus on your practice rather than a project. You can outline what the activity is in detail, and if travel is part of the activity, make sure that you describe what's going to happen and why it's needed. The second part you can think about is, what do you hope to get out of it? So can you explain, for example, why you want to join a particular network? What are the benefits of that? Is your activity ambitious? We can fund small one-off opportunities, so for example a research trip, but we're more interested in supporting extended periods of development, which give you the time to really explore and to work in new ways. The third part to think about is, how will you go about doing it? Can you explain how you're going to manage the activity successfully? Do you have practical plans in place? For example, do you know what steps you need to take to access the network that you want to work with? Have you already asked mentors if they'll be involved? Have you identified any specific training or courses? It's worth remembering we can fund residencies if the experience is tailored to your development, but it might weaken your application if the residency is quite generic or off the shelf. When you've written a draft answer, remember that previous applicant's top tip. You could ask someone to read it and ask you questions about the things that they don't understand.
The third big question we ask is, why is this important for your practice at this point, and how will it help to create future opportunities? Again, one way to approach this is to separate the question into parts. So let's start with the first part of the question. Why is this important for your practice at this point? We read thousands of DYCP applications, and we often see people answering this question by saying something like, after 10 years of making work, now is a pivotal time in my career. This type of answer doesn't give us enough information. It doesn't help us to understand what your main aims are, or what sparked the perfect conditions for a change right now. So what are the kind of things that help us to understand why now is the right time? Well, strong applications might describe a new opportunity that's come up, which you can use to shift your practice. And this opportunity might only be available for a limited time. Another explanation we see in strong applications is how you can build on momentum. So you might be in a situation where a few different things have happened recently and created perfect conditions for you to try something new. They could be small things, but added together, they offer a really ambitious and exciting opportunity, and they enable you to travel forwards with a change. Another example might be where you find yourself in a situation that means you need to work differently. Perhaps you've been offered an opportunity that requires you to learn new skills. Or finally, you might find that the need for change is prompted from learning something in your work recently or acting on feedback. So have you had feedback that suggests a change to your practice is needed to move forward in your career? Another tip we heard from people that have applied to this fund in the past is that sometimes it's hard to start by writing down your answers. Instead, you could record a conversation with a friend or colleague, asking you questions about why now is the right time. In this format, your answers might be more relaxed and natural because you're chatting. Find someone who can push you for more detail or clarity, and this could help you shape your thoughts as you listen back. The second part of this question asks, how will this help create future opportunities? It can feel challenging to know where to start with this question, so let's go back to the advice of breaking it down into smaller steps. Some people start by thinking about a small difference they want to make to their practice and build from there. Or you could consider what you want to be different about your practice in the future and work backwards to think about the steps you need to take to achieve this. What do you want this development to lead to? Or what does this period of development allow you to do that you couldn't do before? For example, this could be accessing new networks. Tell us about those networks and why you want to access them. It could be taking on different work, and you tell us about what that looks like. It could be that you're creating for new people. What are the types of communities you'll create for? It could be having a different or improved model for your practice, and you could tell us about how it is different or improved. What will be different about your practice as a result of this development? Remember that DYCP is not about continuing something you already do. Strong applications are specific, and they tell us what doors the activity will open in the future. We receive far more good applications than we can fund. If your application isn't funded, there are restrictions on applying again, so please think carefully about the best time to apply. A really good place to start before you begin to write the application is the Am I Ready to Apply quiz. It's a great tool to help you understand whether your idea is developed enough to begin to write the application.